The planet of Vera was a place of endless storms and broken skies. Jagged towers of black stone rose from the deserts like the teeth of some ancient beast. Lightning crawled across the clouds, flashing in angry bursts that turned night into day and day into night again. To the people of the frontier, this world was little more than a battlefield. Two alien clans fought for its ruins, and scattered human outposts struggled to survive between them. Aaron had learned long ago not to trust silence on Vera. Silence meant someone was waiting, watching. He moved carefully over the rocks, his scout rifle pressed close to his chest. Dust clung to his boots and the bitter wind tugged at his jacket. Every sense told him he was being followed, and he kept his breath steady, refusing to give his nerves away. He was not a soldier of fame or rank, only a scout sent to map enemy movements, but here survival was its own kind of victory. The first time he saw her, she stood alone on a ridge above the ruined city. Tall and armored, with a blade on her back that gleamed even through the stormlight, she looked like a statue carved from metal. Her name was Rava, though Aaron did not know it yet. To him, she was only another warrior from the clans who considered humans little more than insects. Her people were known for their strength and their long lives. They spoke of humans as if they were fragile children, quick to die and too soft to matter. Aaron had heard those words often enough from travelers and prisoners alike. She looked down at him, her voice cold and sharp. "So this is the human who dares cross my path. I was told your kind break easily. One strike and you fall." Aaron raised his rifle but did not fire. The distance was wide and her armor looked thick. He knew a fight here would end badly, yet he held his ground, his boots steady against the rocks. "Maybe we fall," he said, his voice quiet against the wind. "But we rise again. That is why we are still here." Her laughter carried over the storm. It was not joyful laughter, but the hard laugh of someone who had seen too many battles. "Rise again. Weak wood breaks no matter how many times it bends. You should run, human. I have no wish to waste my blade." Aaron did not move. The city below them was filled with shadows and shifting lights. Somewhere within those ruins, enemy forces were gathering. His orders were clear: observe, record, and return alive. But standing here before the warrior, he knew the night had other plans. The air smelled of fire and iron, and the ground seemed ready to split open. He felt that strange pull of fate, the kind that comes only before something great or terrible. Rava turned as if to leave, her long cloak snapping in the wind. Yet before she could take more than a step, the storm broke with sudden violence. A flare of light burst across the city, followed by the deep roar of engines. Enemy ships descended, pouring warriors into the streets below. The rival clan had chosen this moment to strike. The ruins became alive with fire. Rava froze. She had expected a battle, but not here and not now. Her hand went to her blade, and her eyes narrowed with sudden focus. "They are here," she muttered almost to herself. She glanced back at Aaron, as if considering whether to cut him down before facing her true enemies. But in that moment of hesitation, the attack found them both. Bolts of energy screamed across the ridge. The rocks shattered around them, sending shards into the air. Aaron dropped low, rolling behind a broken wall. His rifle barked once, then again, but the attackers were too many. He saw their shapes moving through the smoke, their armor marked with the crimson crest of their clan. Rava charged at them with a roar, her blade flashing bright as lightning. She cut through the first line, her strength carrying her like a storm of her own. Yet even she could not face such numbers alone. Aaron fired again, forcing two of the enemy to the ground. His aim was steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. He had no love for Rava's people, but neither did he wish to see her fall to the rival clan. A dead alien warrior was one less chance to survive this chaos. For the moment at least, they were bound by circumstance. The ridge crumbled under the assault. Smoke thickened until the air itself seemed to choke them. Rava leapt back, her blade dripping with sparks, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. She gave Aaron a hard look. "You fight," she said, almost surprised. "For a weakling, you do not break so easily." He gave a small smile, though his hand shook as he reloaded his rifle. "Told you. We rise again." The enemies pressed harder, climbing the rocks, their shouts echoing against the stone. Aaron and Rava exchanged no more words. They moved together not as friends, but as fighters who knew that survival meant cooperation. She struck down those who drew close, and he shot those who tried to keep their distance. Step by step, they retreated into the ruins of the city, the ground shaking under the storm above. By the time they found shelter in a half-collapsed hall, their breaths came ragged and their bodies ached. Aaron slid down against a wall, his rifle across his knees. Rava stood tall, her eyes scanning the darkness, her blade still ready. The fire from the battle painted her armor in shades of red and gold. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the storm and their tired breathing. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "Do not mistake this for respect, human. You are still fragile. You are still short-lived. But perhaps you are not as empty as I thought." Aaron did not answer. His mind was already racing with thoughts of the next move, of how to escape the city alive. Yet he knew this night had already changed something. The alien warrior had seen him fight, and though she called him weak, her eyes told a different story. There was a weight in her gaze, as if a seed of doubt had been planted in her heart. Outside, the war raged on. The rival clan poured through the ruins, and the city shook with their fury. But within the broken hall, a fragile alliance had been born. Human and alien, once enemies by nature, now stood side by side against a greater threat. Neither of them yet understood what this night would mean. They only knew that survival demanded more than strength. It demanded trust. And so began the clash, not only of clans and armies, but of two souls from different worlds. One called the other weak, and the other only smiled. For sometimes the greatest strength lies hidden in the most unlikely places. The ruins of the city stretched wide before them, a maze of broken walls and shattered towers. Wind whistled through empty windows, carrying the scent of smoke and burnt stone. The storm had not passed. Lightning still flickered across the clouds, casting sharp shadows that made every corner feel alive. Aaron and Rava moved quickly, their steps echoing softly through the hollow streets. Behind them, the rival clan still searched, their shouts rising and falling in the distance. Aaron's rifle felt heavier with each step. His arms ached, his legs burned, yet he did not slow. He knew if he paused for too long, the enemy would catch them. Rava walked ahead, her tall figure a clear shape even in the darkness. She did not seem to tire as quickly as he did. Her kind were built for endurance and strength, yet even she carried a stiffness in her movements. The battle had drained her more than she admitted. They entered a wide hall where the roof had half collapsed. Piles of stone blocked the far doors, and broken statues lay scattered across the floor. The carvings on the walls were old, older than either of their people's presence on this world. Aaron brushed his hand across the stone as he passed, feeling the marks of some long-lost builders. It gave him a strange sense of calm, as if the ruins whispered stories of survival that stretched back centuries. Rava halted near a fallen column, her eyes narrowing. She pressed her palm against her side, and for the first time Aaron noticed the dark stains spreading beneath the plates of her armor. She had been wounded during the fight on the ridge, but she had hidden it well. Now the strain was clear in her face, the tightness around her eyes, the shallow rise and fall of her chest. "You are hurt," Aaron said. His voice was steady, but his concern sharpened. "You should have told me." "It is nothing," Rava replied, though her breath betrayed her. "I have faced worse. My body will heal." But when she tried to take another step, her knee buckled and she caught herself on the column. The weight of her armor pulled her down and she sank slowly to the ground. For all her pride, she could not hide the pain now. Aaron moved to her side without hesitation. He set his rifle down and pulled a small pouch from his belt. It was not much, only the standard supplies carried by human scouts. Bandages, a few tools, a small vial of antiseptic. He had no advanced medical gear, no healing machines like her people possessed. But he had his hands, his training, and a stubborn refusal to let her die. "Do not waste your time," Rava said through clenched teeth. "If this wound kills me, then it is my fate." Aaron ignored her. He found the gap in her armor where the energy bolt had cut through, and he carefully cleaned the wound. Her skin was tougher than human skin, but the injury ran deep. Blood, dark and thick, stained his cloth. He worked quickly, pressing the bandages tight, using strips of his own jacket when the supplies ran short. His movements were firm yet gentle, each action born from necessity. Rava watched him in silence. At first she seemed ready to push him away, to demand he leave her be. Yet as he continued, she felt something she could not name. His hands shook slightly, not from fear but from determination. His face was set in quiet focus. Every motion said one thing clearly: he would not let her fall. When he finished, he sat back on his heels, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's not perfect," he admitted, "but it will hold. You need to rest. You saved me," Rava said at last. Her voice was low, almost uncertain. She looked down at the bandages, then at him. Why, we are not allies. My people see yours as lesser. I told you yourself that you were weak. Why risk your life for me? Aaron met her gaze without flinching. His eyes were tired but steady. Because leaving you to die would make me less human. And because out here, survival isn't about who is stronger. It's about who stands together. Her chest rose slowly as she breathed in his words. She had fought countless battles, seen warriors fall, seen leaders betray their own to save themselves. But this man, fragile in body and short-lived by her people's standards, had carried her when she stumbled, had bound her wounds with his own clothes. It was not logic. It was not duty. It was something deeper, something her kind rarely valued. For the first time in many years, Rava felt her pride tremble. They stayed in the hall as the storm raged outside. Aaron kept watch at the broken windows, his rifle ready, while Rava rested against the column. The firelight from the distant battle flickered across the walls, painting their shadows side by side. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the crash of thunder and the occasional shout of enemy patrols moving through the ruins. When dawn came, pale and cold, Aaron rose to his feet. His body ached from exhaustion, but he forced himself onward. We cannot stay here, he said. They will find us if we do. Can you walk? Rava pushed herself up slowly. Her wound still burned, but the bandages held. She tested her weight, then nodded. I can walk, she said, though her voice lacked its usual sharpness. Lead on, human. As they made their way through the city, they kept close to the shadows. The streets were filled with debris, and every corner threatened ambush. Aaron guided them with care, marking paths in his mind, choosing routes that offered cover. More than once they slipped past enemy patrols by mere breaths, hiding in broken houses until the danger passed. Through it all, Aran stayed close to Rava, ready to catch her if her strength failed again. Once, as they paused in the shell of a tower, Rava spoke softly. When I first saw you, I believed you would fall with the first strike. I believed the stories of my people, that humans were frail and unworthy of respect, but now, I am not so certain. Aaron gave her a small smile, though his eyes remained on the streets below. We may not be the strongest. We may not live as long as your kind, but we don't give up. That's what makes us dangerous. Her gaze lingered on him. Dangerous, she thought, not because of power, but because of spirit. She remembered how he had carried her through the tunnels, how he had faced the storm with nothing but his rifle and will. She had called him weak, yet he had saved her when she could not save herself. By the time the sun rose high, they had reached the far edge of the city. The open desert stretched before them, vast and empty. Beyond it lay the outposts of both their peoples. Rava stood beside Aaron, her wound aching, her pride humbled, her heart heavy with thoughts she could not yet name. She looked at him one last time before they stepped into the desert winds. You are not what I believed, human. Perhaps weakness is not the word for you. Perhaps there is another strength I do not yet understand. Aaron adjusted his rifle and met her gaze. Maybe one day you will, and together they walked on. The city burned behind them, but between them something new had begun. Not trust, not yet, but the first fragile thread of respect, woven by the simple act of saving a life. The desert stretched wide and empty, its sand glowing pale under the harsh sun. Heat shimmered above the ground, and the air carried the scent of dust. Aaron and Rava moved slowly across the wasteland, their figures small against the endless horizon. Every step felt heavier than the last, but neither of them turned back toward the ruined city they had left behind. Behind them, the smoke of battle still rose like a black pillar into the sky. Aaron's lips were dry and his throat burned. His canteen was almost empty, and he had been rationing drops of water since dawn. Yet his mind stayed clear. Each time he glanced at Rava, he reminded himself why he had not stopped. Her armor gleamed under the sunlight, but the wound beneath still weakened her. Though she walked tall, her steps were slower than before, and her hand sometimes brushed her side as if to quiet the pain. Aaron stayed close, ready to steady her if she stumbled. By noon, they reached a ridge of stone where shadows stretched across the sand. Aaron guided them into the cool shade, and they rested against the rocks. He checked Rava's bandages, finding them stained again but still holding. She remained silent as he worked, her gaze distant, fixed on the horizon. When he finished, he leaned back, closing his eyes for a brief moment of rest. It was the sound of distant engines that broke the silence. Low at first, then louder, rolling through the air like thunder. Aaron snapped his eyes open and looked up. Across the desert, shapes moved through the haze. Enemy patrol ships, swift and armed, were searching the sands. Dust trailed behind them like banners, and the sunlight caught the edges of their metal hulls. "They are hunting," Rava said. Her voice was calm, but her hand tightened on her blade. "They will not stop until they have found us." Aaron rose quickly. "Then we cannot stay here. Come on." They moved from the ridge into a shallow canyon carved by old floods. The stone walls rose on either side, offering some cover, but also trapping them if the enemy came too close. Aaron kept his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the shadows above. The sound of engines grew nearer, and soon the sky trembled as the ships passed overhead. Dust rained down from the cliffs. Aaron pressed his back against the wall, holding his breath until the rumble faded. For a short while it seemed they had escaped notice. They pressed deeper into the canyon, following its winding path. But the calm was broken by a shout from above. Figures appeared at the rim, their armor marked with the red crest of the rival clan. A moment later, fire rained down. Blasts of energy tore into the stone, filling the canyon with smoke and fire. "Run!" Aaron shouted, pulling Rava forward. They sprinted through the narrow path as bolts exploded around them. The ground shook and shards of rock flew in every direction. Aaron fired upward, forcing the attackers to scatter, but they were outnumbered. He knew they could not outrun the ambush forever. The canyon opened suddenly into a wide basin filled with broken machinery, the remains of some ancient station half buried in the sand. Towers of rusted metal leaned against the cliffs, and shattered beams stretched like bones across the ground. Aaron and Rava dashed inside, weaving through the wreckage. The enemy followed, their shouts echoing like a chorus of war. Aaron ducked behind a fallen beam, his breath heavy. He searched quickly through the debris, his mind racing. He had no heavy weapons, no reinforcements. Yet the ruins around them were filled with scraps, wires, and metal shards. His hands moved instinctively, gathering what he needed. He set his rifle down long enough to shape a crude trap, tying wires to unstable beams, planting small charges in weak points. His fingers worked fast, driven by urgency. Rava watched him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What are you doing?" "These scraps will not stop them." "Maybe not," Aaron replied, his voice sharp with focus. "But they can slow them down." Moments later, the first enemy entered the wreck. Aaron fired once, dropping him, then pulled Rava into cover as the others advanced. The traps he set came alive. A beam collapsed onto two attackers, crushing them in a cloud of dust. Another wire snapped, sending shards of metal flying into the path of their pursuers. The ruins shook with chaos as Aaron used the wreckage itself as his ally. Rava joined the fight, her blade flashing as she cut down those who came too close. Though weakened, her strength remained fearsome. She fought with precision, her movements sharp despite the pain in her side. Together they held the line, human and alien side by side, against the tide of warriors pressing forward. The battle raged until the sun dipped low, painting the wreckage in gold. At last the enemy began to fall back. Their patrol ships called them away, retreating into the distance. Silence slowly returned, broken only by the crackle of fire and the rasp of tired breaths. Aaron leaned against the broken beam, sweat dripping from his brow. His arms trembled from exhaustion, yet his eyes stayed sharp. Rava stood nearby, her chest rising heavily, her blade stained with battle. For a long moment they said nothing, only breathing the same hot air, listening to the quiet that followed the storm of fire. Finally, Rava spoke. "You fight as if the ground itself is your ally. With nothing but scraps, you turned ruins into weapons. My people would never think to fight this way." Aaron gave a tired smile. "We don't always have strength, so we use what we have. That's how humans survive." Her gaze lingered on him, steady and searching. She thought of the stories her clan told. Stories of fragile humans who broke under pressure, who lacked honor in battle. Yet here was one who stood against greater numbers, who shaped victory from the dust itself. She felt a strange weight in her chest, not of pride, but of respect she had not meant to give. As the night fell, they found a sheltered corner within the ruins. Aaron set a small fire, its glow pushing back the shadows. They shared the last of his water, passing the canteen between them. For the first time, Rava did not mock him or call him weak. She simply sat beside him, silent, her thoughts deep and unsettled. Aaron stared into the flames, his body aching but his spirit steady. He knew the fight was far from over. The rival clan would return stronger and in greater numbers. Yet he also knew he was not alone. Against all odds, he and Rava had survived another day together. And with each battle, something stronger than survival was being forged between them. Far above, the stars pierced the darkness. The desert lay quiet under their watch, but within that quiet burned a fire that could not be easily put out. The night in the desert was colder than the day was hot. Wind swept through the wreckage where Aran and Rava had made their camp, and the flames of their small fire bent low as if trying to escape the chill. Aaron sat with his back to a broken beam, his rifle across his knees. His eyes searched the dark edges of the ruin, alert for the glint of enemy armor. Rava rested near him, her back against a piece of rusted metal, her face hidden in the shadow of her helmet. For a long time, they said nothing. Silence had grown between them, but it was no longer the silence of mistrust. It was the silence of thought, heavy with things neither dared to put into words. At last, Rava spoke, her voice quiet but firm.
"Human, why do you not rest?"
"Your body is tired. Your eyes carry the weight of days without sleep." Aaron shook his head slightly. "I'll rest when I know we're safe. Out here, one mistake is all it takes." She studied him, the firelight catching the lines of his face. His skin was rough from sun and dust, his lips dry, his eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. She had seen warriors of her own people fall long before reaching this level of weariness. Yet this man did not yield. "You do not stop," she said softly, almost to herself. "Even when your strength should fail, you keep moving." "Why?" Aaron glanced at her, then back into the dark. "Because if I stop, then you stop. And if you stop, we both die. It's that simple." Her chest tightened. She had expected arrogance, perhaps the words of someone boasting of bravery. But his answer was plain, without pride, without show. It was survival, yes, but more than that. It was commitment, as if her life mattered to him as much as his own. They drifted into silence again, the fire crackling softly. Above them, stars stretched across the desert sky, bright and endless. Rava tilted her head back, watching them. In her mind, she recalled the voices of her clan, the endless lessons that humans were lesser, that their short lives made them reckless and weak. Yet nothing in Aran's actions matched those words. She wondered for the first time if her people had been blind. The quiet did not last. Near midnight, a sound carried on the wind. A low hum, then the sharper growl of engines. Aaron was on his feet instantly, his rifle ready. He scanned the ridges above the ruin, his pulse quickening. Rava rose as well, though more slowly, her wound making her steps heavy. From the cliffs, enemy ships descended once more, their lights sweeping across the sand. Shadows moved with them, warriors pouring down into the basin. This time it was not a patrol. It was a strike force larger and stronger than before. "They come again," Rava said, her hand tightening on her blade. Aaron's jaw tightened. "Then we hold them off long enough to escape. Follow me." They moved through the wreckage, weaving between broken towers of metal. Aaron led her toward a narrow tunnel carved into the cliffside. If they could reach it, they might vanish into the deeper canyons. But the enemy closed in quickly, their shouts echoing like drums across the desert floor. Blasts lit up the ruins. Aaron fired back, his shots sharp and precise. Rava swung her blade, cutting down those who dared come close. For a while, they pushed forward step by step toward the tunnel, but the enemy numbers swelled, pressing harder, surrounding them from every side. It was during this clash that Rava's wound finally betrayed her. As she swung her blade against a towering soldier, her legs faltered. Pain ripped through her side, and her strike slowed. The enemy's counterblow struck her square across the chest, sending her crashing to the ground. Her blade slid from her grip and landed in the sand with a dull thud. "Rava!" Aaron shouted. He dashed toward her, firing rapidly to keep the enemy back. Dropping to his knees beside her, he pulled her up against the cover of a fallen beam. Her breathing was ragged, her eyes dim with strain. Blood seeped fresh through the bandages he had wrapped only hours ago. "You're not dying here," Aaron said firmly, though fear gripped his chest. He tore fresh cloth from his sleeve and pressed it against her side, his hand steady despite the chaos around them. "Stay with me. Just stay with me." Her eyes found his, and for a moment the battle around them faded. She saw not a fragile human, but a man who refused to let her go, even as the enemy pressed close. She had fought wars her whole life, but never had anyone fought so hard for her, not even those of her own kind. Her vision blurred, and she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why do you care so much? I am not your people." I am nothing to you. Aaron's voice was steady, though his heart pounded. Because no one deserves to be left behind. Not you, not anyone. As long as I can fight, I'll fight for you. Her chest heaved, and to her own surprise, tears welled in her eyes. She had never wept in battle, never in all her years as a warrior. Yet now, as this human bound her wounds with his own torn clothes and shielded her with his body, something broke within her pride. A single tear slid down her cheek, cutting through the dust. The sight struck her more deeply than any blade ever could. She whispered, her voice trembling. All my life I was told humans were weak. But here you are, carrying me when I cannot carry myself, protecting me when I can no longer fight. If this is weakness, then my people have forgotten what strength truly is. Aaron held her steady as the enemy advanced again. His rifle roared, holding them back. Every shot was placed with precision, every breath drawn with determination. He had no armor, no great weapon, no centuries of training. But he had something stronger, something no enemy could take. His refusal to surrender. At last, lights appeared across the desert floor. A human patrol drawn by the noise of the battle charged into the basin. Their rifles blazed, their shouts cutting through the chaos. The rival clan, outnumbered at last, began to fall back. One by one, they withdrew, their engines roaring as ships lifted into the night sky. Aaron stayed at Rava's side, even as relief washed over him. When the patrol reached them, medics rushed forward, but he did not move until her breathing steadied. Only then did he lower his rifle, his body trembling with exhaustion. Rava's eyes stayed on him, shining with something she had not felt in years. Respect, yes, but more than that. A bond she could not name, a weight in her heart she had never known. She remembered the tear that had escaped her, the way her pride had broken in that moment. She knew her life had changed. As the medics lifted her onto a stretcher, she reached for Aaron's arm, her grip strong despite her weakness. You saved me, she said. Her voice was steady now, filled with something rare. Never again will I call you weak. Never again. Aaron met her gaze, his own eyes heavy with fatigue. Rest, you'll need your strength again. This fight isn't over yet. Her grip tightened for a heartbeat, then slowly released as the medics carried her toward the patrol ship. Aaron watched her go, his chest filled with a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. He had saved her life, but in doing so, he had also changed both of theirs. For Rava, the battle had not only torn her body, but reshaped her spirit. For Aaron, it had proved once again that the true measure of strength was not in power or might, but in the will to protect. The desert fell quiet once more, broken only by the hum of engines as the patrol prepared to leave. But in that quiet something new had been born. A warrior's pride had been shattered, and in its place grew something far stronger. Respect, trust, and a bond that no war could erase. The patrol ship lifted slowly from the desert floor, its engines stirring sand into swirling clouds. Aaron watched from the ramp as the medics secured Rava inside. Her tall form lay stretched across the narrow bed, her armor removed in pieces so the wounds could be treated properly. The bandages he had wrapped with his own hands had been replaced with cleaner, stronger fabric, but his heart still tightened as he looked at her. He had fought so hard to keep her alive, and now, for the first time, she was safe under the care of others. He lowered himself onto a metal seat near the wall of the ship. His rifle leaned beside him, its barrel still marked with dust and smoke from the fight. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his mind refused to rest. Every sound of the engines, every flicker of shadow beyond the portholes kept him alert. He was used to being a scout, used to being alone, but something had changed. He was no longer only watching for himself. He was watching for her too. As the ship crossed the dunes and entered the valleys, Rava stirred. Her eyes opened, heavy with fatigue but filled with a light Aaron had never seen before. She glanced around until her gaze fell on him. For a moment, she said nothing. She simply watched him, the man who had refused to let her fall. Then her lips moved. You did not leave, she whispered. Aaron gave a tired smile. I told you. I don't leave anyone behind. Her chest rose and fell with a deep breath. She closed her eyes again, but not to shut him out. This time it was to let herself rest, comforted by the simple truth of his words. The journey back to the human outpost lasted through the night. When dawn came, the sun painted the desert gold, and the walls of the outpost appeared against the horizon. Towers of steel rose from the sands, their antennas reaching high into the morning sky. Soldiers lined the gates, weapons in hand, scanning the incoming ship. Aaron stepped down first when the ramp lowered. His boots touched the familiar ground, yet it felt different than before. Behind him, the medics carried Rava out. The sight of an alien warrior inside human territory drew sharp stares and whispers from the soldiers nearby. Some raised their rifles slightly, uncertain whether to trust her. "She is with me," Aaron said firmly, stepping between her and their weapons. His voice left no space for argument. The commanding officer, a tall woman with silver hair, approached. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the scene. "Aaron, what have you brought us?" "A survivor," Aaron answered. "One who fought beside me when the enemy came. She's wounded. She needs time to recover." The officer's eyes lingered on Rava, then shifted back to Aaron. "You know the risk. Her people are not allies." "I know," Aaron said, his voice steady. "But she saved my life and I saved hers. That makes her more than an enemy to me." The officer studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Very well. She will be treated. But she stays under watch." Aaron exhaled, relieved. He followed the medics as they carried Rava into the outpost. Days passed, and during those days Rava's recovery became a quiet story told among the soldiers. Many came to see the alien warrior who lay in the human infirmary, tall and strong even in weakness, her sharp eyes watching every corner of the room. At first she kept silent, speaking only when necessary, but Aaron visited her often, and slowly words began to pass between them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Aaron sat beside her bed. The room was lit by a single lamp, casting warm light across her armor, which rested in pieces on the floor. Rava looked at him with calm eyes, her voice quiet. "Your people watch me with suspicion," she said. "I can feel it in their stares. They wait for me to prove the stories they believe." Aaron nodded. "They don't know you like I do. To them you're a threat. To me you're the one who stood beside me when no one else did." Her gaze softened, though her voice remained firm. "And to me you are the one who carried me when I could no longer walk. The one who fought for me when I could no longer fight. Tell me, Aaron, why do you risk so much for someone who was once your enemy?" He leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped loosely. "Because I've seen too much loss already. I don't want to add your name to that list. Maybe it doesn't make sense to anyone else, but it makes sense to me." She studied him for a long time, her thoughts heavy. At last she said, "Then perhaps your weakness is not weakness at all. Perhaps it is strength my people never understood." In the days that followed, their bond grew stronger. Aaron often trained in the yard outside the infirmary, his rifle aimed at distant targets, his movements sharp and practiced. Rava would watch from the window, her eyes tracing the precision of each shot. Sometimes, when she was strong enough to stand, she joined him. The soldiers stared, whispering as the alien warrior lifted practice blades and sparred against Aaron. Their strikes clashed in the dust, their movements fierce yet always controlled. It was during these sparring sessions that respect became something deeper. They learned the rhythm of each other's steps, the weight of each other's strength. Aaron discovered the patience hidden behind her power. Rava discovered the endurance buried within his shorter frame. One evening, after their training, they sat together on the wall of the outpost, watching the desert glow in the light of the setting sun. The horizon stretched endlessly, painted with shades of gold and crimson. Rava spoke first. "In my world, strength is measured by how many battles you survive, how many foes you defeat. But now I wonder if true strength is something else." Aaron glanced at her. "And what do you think it is?" She turned her eyes toward the horizon. "It is the will to fight for someone else, to stand when every part of you wants to fall. That is strength. And I learned it not from my people, but from you." Aaron smiled faintly, though his heart felt heavy with the weight of her words. "Then maybe we're both learning. Because I used to think survival was about staying alive, but now I think it's about who you survive with." The desert wind brushed past them, carrying the coolness of night. For a long while they sat in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because some truths needed no words. The bond between them had grown, unseen but unbreakable. The soldiers of the outpost watched with wary eyes, yet even they began to sense the change. Where once there had been suspicion, now there was curiosity. Some even began to nod in respect when Rava passed, though their trust was still cautious. But beyond the outpost walls, danger was never far. Reports came of enemy movements gathering again. larger and more dangerous than before. The rival clan had not forgotten their failed strike. They would return, and this time their fury would be greater. Aaron and Rava both knew the peace would not last. Yet as they stood side by side on the wall one night looking out over the endless sands, neither felt fear. For whatever battles lay ahead, they would face them together. She turned to him, her eyes steady, her voice strong. "When the enemy comes again, I will fight at your side. Not because I must, but because I choose to." Aaron met her gaze, his voice just as firm. "Then we'll face them together, and we'll show them what strength really means." The desert stretched before them, vast and waiting. The fire of war still burned on the horizon, but between them, something brighter had been lit. A bond not forged in blood alone, but in trust, sacrifice, and the refusal to let each other fall. It was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning of something greater.